So what is funny is that in September 2011, there was the first conference inside Damascus of, let's say, the local opposition. And in October, 16 days later, the Syrian National Council was created in Istanbul after several weeks. And everybody, and this is the most astonishing, forget about the split between the two, every guy who assisted to the meeting in Damascus as an opposition was insulted by the guys who made the thing in Turkey, in the SNC. And this was astonishing. Of course, if you are, the basic point to say, if you are in Damascus and you have the security services around you, you cannot be as down everything as the guy who didn't put his feet in Syria for 30 years. You have to interact with the things. Of course, the guys outside has much more means to deal with the local things. Anyhow, but at this moment, in October 2000, when what was happening is the Libyan case. Means we spoke about Tunisia and Egypt quickly, but Libya was a different thing. And on the question of Libya, was it a revolution, a conspiracy, or a civil war? I think even those who say definitely 80% or 90% of what's happening in Syria is a revolution, I think the percentage would be much lower to talk about it. Libya was not a revolution. Was not a revolution. There is a lot of documentation that there was a major manipulation of the secret services, and if you want to detail, the French and the Qatari secret services, to make something. This was a real conspiracy. And even the head of the transition government of Libya said that after the collapse of Gaddafi regime, we cannot be only the men of Qatar. It was laid out. It's from the local thing, and if you know Libya, and if you know the Libyan people, and how you can imagine that Egypt, you can have a revolution. But saying that you can have a revolution in Libya is like saying you can have a revolution in Saudi Arabia. You have a lot of money, you can buy allegiances in a lot of things. So you're smiling about the money.
Like saying revolution in Saudi Arabia, it's like saying having a revolution in Switzerland as well. But I was just joking, so
no. You can have revolutions, it depends on the level of vivacity of the civil society. I saw you talking about the history of Switzerland and etc. The civil society in Switzerland is very active. Means the problem in Switzerland is to make a revolution against whom? You have no power system, rigid power system to make things. And I don't think also there is a lot of young, I don't know how is the growth rate of the youth in Switzerland, but you need, it's not the old guys who will make revolution.
No, you need.
Yeah.
But they're high enough, yeah.
But Saudi Arabia has a lot of young people. They can make the revolution. Means they know who to target. But there is no possibility to make a revolution because whenever you have a population, etc., take the example I was explaining about two areas, one is clientele of the regime and the other was complaining, making demonstration. They could bring money and pay everybody and stop the problem. In Saudi Arabia. In Syria, they don't have the means to do that. Yes. The major problem since October in Syria was the creation of an umbrella of the opposition, which was not an umbrella of the opposition because it excluded some part of the opposition. It wanted to have, like what I call the Libya pollution. The Libya pollution, there was an SNC guys. The names of who was in this transitionary government was not known two of them went to Sarkozy, and Sarkozy recognized them as the legitimate government. This is in international law, cannot be made. You can recognize them as legitimate combating or movement, I don't know, like Farabundo Manti or any South African thing, but they cannot be the Libyan legitimacy. Anyhow, they fought. Means the whole strategy of the SNC was to go and try to get similar legitimacy. And at least the advantage of the transitional government of Libya, they were traitors, but they knew the system. They were ambassadors, they were civil servants, and etc. They knew what is their country. The problem of the leaders of the SNC is when you check what they call the 10 promises to heaven, the executive committee. No one has put feet in Syria except for, let's say, 10 days in a year. And some of them didn't go to Syria for the last 30 years only twice. There is a problem. They don't know Syria. And this is a major problem in countries like Syria or Lebanon, etc., that the number of Syrians abroad is as much as the number of Syrians inside. So for whom you make the revolution? For the people inside or for the people outside? And each has a concept of Syria which is different. Anyhow, so the big problem was there since the creation of the National Council was to get out of the Libyan position. Imagining that the revolution could end with the airstrike of NATO. If you are the guy who give the political orders and say where to hit and what to hit and stop there, maybe this could imagine. But when you leech the NATO or the foreign powers, you know, don't anymore have any control on your revolution. This was the major problem. But still, for something like October to now, it's almost a year. No politics, no negotiations. We want to overthrow the regime through foreign intervention. And this was really headache. With Michel Kilo and others, we created in last February something civic politics, saying stay with SNC, stay with whatever you want, stay with whatever. Just come and talk politics. Just talk politics. Whatever is your opinion. Come fight with me politics. This was very funny because it is not a political party. What everybody thinks that it's political. It's not. It doesn't. It is divided, very much divided. Its only aim was to bring everybody to talk politics. Just please talk politics. The first time I went, the first conference in February, there was these young guys coming. Samir Aita, we hate you. Why? You talk politics. I wrote you here just to talk politics. We hate you. I don't care if you hate me. This is not the problem. Let me talk about the conspiracy. Conspiracy, you have two Arab words. One is with money with low population, the other is with big population. This is a major problem. Three. The countries with money, with their media, are playing an enormous role in the revolution. There could be no revolution. Tunisia, Jazeera didn't play a role. In Egypt, in some moments, they play a role. In Syria, they are the role. They are the role. Means what they show, what they don't show, influence the revolution. They push it in a way. In Libya, it was the army, which means one of the weapons of the whole thing. But when you discuss with the Qataris, it's funny because they tell you that the Emir of Qatar has his own symbol in Nasser. He wants to create a new Arab awakening based in Qatar. I find this difficult. I was born in the period of Nasser. I was educated in the songs of Nasser, etc. Like you can criticize that he was a dictator, he lost a lot of things, but the idea to have, you know, Qatar, the Qataris are 200,000 people. And you can put them in all Qataris in one area. This is one Qatari. And having the Prince of Qatar or Hamad bin Jassim talking to you politics about Syria, this makes you very fun. And they hate it because they wanted to make the first meeting of the opposition in Qatar. Finally, we went there, but it was difficult because we didn't have any money just to make a conference to bring everybody and to take the guys out. So you had to talk politics to the Syrians in Qatar. Why do you believe that the change cannot come from Qatar? And the basic question, I will get back to this. Could a non-democratic country push democracy in another country? Should I explain this again? No, is it free? في بلد غير ديمقراطية ممكن هي تدفش الديمقراطية بلد ثاني. Doesn't make sense.
مستحيل.
Doesn't make sense. So I started saying the conference in Doha. Arab Spring is not only for republics, it's always also for kingdoms. This also for Jordan. Second thing, the end of the Arab Spring, and really I believe that it will stand for 15 years to see the end. The end of the Arab Spring could not be a coalition between the non-democratic Gulf countries and the West to dominate the transforming republics. Of course, the transforming republics would be weakened during the transformation. They would be weakened. But you cannot prevail. We are camels. Who are you? And they came. Because this was on air on TV. Anyhow, I do believe that. Because I believe something. The Westerns forbid to the Qataris and Saudis to buy companies here. They only buy bankrupted companies or bankrupted banks to save politicians. Means when the Greek government needs something for his own thing, Sarkozy calls the Emir of Qatar, could you buy these banks because it will collapse and it is the whole euro thing. This is what they said. But this is, as in the industrial strategy for Qatar, this is nothing. It will not. When you see the influence today of a country like Qatar, in Tunisia, in Libya, this is incredible. They are buying countries. This will not happen if I'm alive. I don't say. Anyhow, then there was in this conference in Qatar a very funny story that need to be told. You have to acknowledge that there is a majority, which opened the civil war question. At the end of the conference, I asked Azmi Chara was organizing. Azmi Chara is an Israeli-Palestinian who is Israeli deputy, very famous in the Arab world, who has been paid by the Emir of Qatar to make an enormous center in Egypt. They have 1,000 Syrians today in the center, paid between $5,000 and $15,000 a month.
What's his name?
Azmi Chara. Azmi Chara, very famous, on Al Jazeera every week.